Today, I want to talk about the 3 different types of hunger. There's 3 different types of hunger. If you aren't really sure, like, am I eating because I'm genuinely hungry? Am I eating just out of boredom? Am I eating just because the food's in front of me? This little mini training is going to give you so much clarity on the 3 different types of hunger and when you should actually be eating. So, the first type of hunger is physical hunger. Physical hunger is when you're genuinely hungry. Now, when you're genuinely hungry, think about maybe you haven't eaten in a while. You're not worried about what am I going to eat? You're not worried about, you're not really concerned about what you're going to be eating. You just know that you're hungry and you need food. This is true physical hunger. It's like you're not asking yourself, should I eat right now? I remember having a conversation with my clients and she's like, sometimes I'll ask myself should I have an extra slice of toast or should I not? And I said, when you're genuinely hungry, you're not asking yourself whether you should eat or not. You just go and eat. That's true physical hunger. If you're in your head, should I have a second piece of toast? I don't know, should I have a snack right now? You're probably not actually genuinely hungry, because when you're hungry, you're not asking yourself, should I eat right now? You're just like, I need to eat. So that is physical hunger. Physical hunger, maybe you feel a little fatigued. Maybe, your stomach starts to growl. That's true physical hunger. Now, habitual hunger is when you're eating typically at the same time every single day. So if you're always having a snack after dinner, that is habitual hunger. If you're always having a snack, let's say midday at 3 p.m., that is habitual hunger. If you're always having, something sweet right after your meal, that's not true physical hunger. It is habitual. Now, habitual hunger can either be the same time or it could be the same location. So for example, it's every time after dinner. Or it could be every time you watch TV, you eat something. That is habitual. It's not that you're truly physical hungry. It's just familiar. It's safe. Well, every time I watch TV, I have something. Every time after dinner, I have a snack. This is not intuitive eating. Because intuitive eating is sometimes you might have a snack in the middle of the day. Sometimes you might, want to have a snack while you're watching TV. But sometimes you're not actually hungry. And being able to say no in the times where you generally don't want something or you're not actually hungry, that's intuitive eating. If you're always eating whenever you're watching TV, that's habitual. If you're always having a snack every single night, that's habitual. That's habitual snacking. And you really want to be mindful of that because that's not actually the real you. That's not the real you. You're just doing it because it feels safe and comforting and familiar. So again, if you're always eating same time, same place, same location, always in front of the TV, always at the end of the day, always at 3 o'clock on your lunch break, it's you have to actually check in with yourself. Do I really want something right now? You might notice, yeah, I actually do want something right now. And then you have a snack. But there will also be times if you actually check in with yourself that you don't actually want something. And so you have to create that pattern interrupt to break habitual snacking to say, am I actually hungry right now? Am I actually craving something? Do I want something? If you're just always doing things out of autopilot, you're not even hungry. You didn't even ask yourself if you wanted a snack, but you know you're going to watch TV tonight, so you just make yourself a snack. That's not intuitive eating. That is habitual snacking. Now, the last type of hunger is mindless hunger. So mindless hunger is when you're eating just because the food is in front of you. So whether you're at a social event and you're not even hungry, but there's a charcuterie board in front of you and you're like, oh, the food just looks so good. So then you're just like mindlessly snacking even though you're not hungry. Or maybe you're sitting on the couch and you're not hungry, but your husband all of a sudden pulls out the snacks. And now you're like, I want some of that. You're not actually hungry, but because you see the food in front of you, because your husband's eating, or because you remember that you have a certain type of snack in the pantry, that is all mindless. You're not actually hungry, but the sight of something, the sight of you seeing your husband pull out a snack makes you want the snack. The sight of the food in front of you, it just looks really good, and then you start eating. That is mindless snacking. So again, we have true physical hunger is when you're actually hungry. You don't even have to ask yourself, am I hungry? You're just like, I need to eat something. You're not concerned about like what you're going to eat. You're just like, I need food because I'm hungry. The habitual hunger typically happens same time, same location. Again, it's out of habit. And then you have the mindless snacking. Mindless snacking, you're eating just because the food is in front of you, just because your husband pulled out a snack, just because you remember that you have some snacks in the pantry. So of course, you want to be eating when you're actually truly physically hungry, and you want to break the cycle of the mindless snacking and the habitual snacking. You will be able to break the habitual snacking and the mindless snacking when you check in with yourself before having a snack. Because if you don't check in with yourself, you're in autopilot mode, right? Like if you don't actually, let's say you normally snack in the evening. Before you go and sit down on the couch, you want to ask yourself, am I craving something? Am I still hungry? You have to create that pattern interrupt, and you also have to be okay with not having a snack. Not because you can't have one, but if you know that you're full, you don't need anything, you're not really craving anything, you can't see this as a form of restriction. You can't see it as like, oh, I'm depriving myself. No, depriving yourself is when you actually genuinely want something and you're not allowing yourself to have it. That's deprivation. But it's not deprivation if you're not hungry and you're not craving anything. If you're not genuinely craving anything and you're not hungry, it is mindless and habitual to just be eating because the food's in front of you or because your husband pulled out a snack. You will start to rewire your brain out of habitual mindless snacking when you take a minute to pause, you ask yourself if you want anything, if you're craving anything, if you're hungry, and then you also remind yourself you're not depriving yourself if you don't have a snack. You're not depriving yourself, you genuinely don't want anything. Just because your husband is eating doesn't mean you need to. Just because there's food in front of you doesn't mean that you need to be eating. This is how you start to rewire your brain out of habitual mindless snacking. And the more you actually honor your true physical hunger, the less you are going to habitually snack and mindless snack. Because when you actually are eating out of true physical hunger and you're listening to your body, you're going to have these satisfying meals. You're going to honor your hunger, right? You're honoring your hunger. You're feeling satisfied. And when you feel full and satisfied, you don't really have the desire to mindlessly snack. It's when you're pushing off true physical hunger, when you end up mindlessly snacking in the evening. It's when you push off your true physical cravings that come the evening, you just are eating completely out of habit, completely mindlessly. So again, when you honor your true physical hunger and you check in with yourself before having a snack, am I hungry? Am I craving something? And you don't see saying no to a snack as a restriction, this is how you are starting to rewire your brain out of habitual mindless snacking. Now, the last thing I'm going to say is you don't always have to be hungry to eat something. Sometimes food just looks good. Like sometimes you're like, I'm not really that hungry, but honestly, like that snack looks really good, or some cheese and crackers sounds really good, or a yogurt bowl sounds really good, or some fruit sounds really good. That is fine. But if you are constantly habitually snacking every single night, you're further ingraining this habit into your brain. If you always eat because your husband pulls out a snack, you're further ingraining this habit into your brain. So if you're just eating because the food looks good every once in a while, that is very different than every single night at 8 o'clock you're having a snack. Every single day at 3 o'clock you're having a snack. That is very different. If you want to be able to rewire your brain so you no longer feel a single urge to binge, you have to break the pattern of habitual mindless snacking. And again, that comes through pausing and asking yourself, am I actually genuinely hungry? And am I craving something? If you're not hungry, you're not craving something, you don't need to be eating. You're probably just eating because the food looks good in front of you. You're probably just eating because your husband's eating. You can break the cycle of habitual snacking with more awareness and recognizing that saying no to snacks doesn't mean you're depriving yourself. You could have the snacks. But if you always have a snack, 8 o'clock at night, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you always have a snack just because you're watching TV or whatever the case may be, you're not going to break this cycle of habitual snacking. So you're allowed to eat when you're not hungry. Like, yes, everybody wants a snack. You don't have to be hungry to have a snack. But if it's every single day, you have to practice saying to yourself, this is a habit, and the only way I'm going to rewire my brain is if I don't act on that habit. I'm not depriving myself. I'm rewiring my brain. And with that mindset, that is going to help you break out of the habitual mindless snacking. So, this was just a little mini training on the 3 different types of hunger. I talked about physical hunger, habitual hunger, and mindless hunger. Again, obviously, you want to be eating when you're physically hungry. And when you do that, the more you do that, the more you honor your hunger. You have more satisfying meals and you're feeling comfortably full. The mindless habitual snacking will automatically start to dissipate in and of itself. Because if you have a really good dinner, you're not going to feel the need to mindlessly snack, right? If you have a really good, satisfying breakfast, a really good, satisfying lunch, a really good, satisfying dinner, you're not going to really feel the need to habitually mindlessly snack. It's when you're not actually having the dinner that you want. You're not prioritizing your meals. You're not making time for meals. Of course, you're going to be mindlessly snacking. So all things to consider. So this was just a little mini training on the different types of hunger. We got physical hunger, habitual hunger, and mindless hunger. Again, rewiring your brain is about doing things differently, even if it feels uncomfortable. Even if it feels uncomfortable to not mindlessly snack in the evening, you're rewiring your brain and use that as like excitement to break out of this habitual cycle. So that's what I have for you guys today. Have a beautiful rest of your day, you guys, and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys.